Hi there, and welcome back to episode 2 of Are They Really Here podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Isaiah.
And this is Hybrid Hank, but you can call me Hank.
Yeah, we're really excited for you to join us again. On this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the most famous UFO case of all time, Roswell crash of 1947.
Yep, so we thought it was a good idea with everything going on nowadays. Of course, there's ancient alien sightings and cases. I'm sure you all know the famous TV show, but really the modern era of UFO investigation really does date back to the Roswell incident, and it has a lot of origins of mainly the U.S. military getting involved with UFO investigations. So I think this is an appropriate start.
Yeah, what we'll do first is give you a full breakdown of the events that transpired from before the crash itself to after, its effects on our culture, UFO culture, and America and the world, really. One of the things that this case has affected me personally, I remember growing up, I know I mentioned in our last podcast that my dad was very interested in UFOs, and one of the things about my dad was he was pretty old. He was born in 1939, and he swears he remembers reading about this case in the newspaper in 1947, which I thought was really cool, a living link to history there. He says that's the incident that sparked his interest in the topic, the subject, and how he eventually passed that down to me. So without further ado, we're going to review the timeline of the incident. We're going to stop. We're going to comment a little bit. We're going to theorize. We're just going to kind of roll with it. This is our second podcast, first with an actual subject. So, be patient again with us. But we can't wait to share this brilliant story, though most of you are probably familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had no idea that this was what piqued your dad's interest really in that too. So that's awesome. And that makes me even more excited to get into this. So yeah, let's get into the details here.
Awesome. So I'm going to start us off. Let's time travel all the way back to Tuesday, July 1st, 1947. So what was happening in New Mexico at the time? There were radars in Roswell, White Sands, and Alamogordo area. They were tracking this object that seemed to defy convention. The speed and maneuvers of this object suggested that it was not a craft manufactured on Earth, but something unearthly, something beyond this world. Checks of the radar equipment revealed no malfunction that would account for what was happening on those the equipment, the radar equipment. So the professionals checking the radar had no clue at all.
And that's a common thread you'll see in a lot, especially these modern cases with the military, is they'll confirm on multiple sensors, multiple radar data, that they're seeing an object that seems to match on each sensor, but it's performing in ways that has no rationale or justification for it being a man-made object. So it seems there's a lot of parallels between that and stuff we see nowadays.
Exactly. Moving to the next day, July 2nd, 1947. At around 9:50 p.m., Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot see an oval object in the sky. They claimed it looked like two inverted saucers faced mouth to mouth, and it was passing over their house in Roswell, New Mexico. And this object, it was heading northwest at a pretty high rate of speed. Folks in the area, they're starting to see strange things. Radar is tracking odd objects. So things are already a little bizarre in the Roswell, New Mexico area.
Yeah, and two inverted saucers mouth to mouth. This guy did not hallucinate getting saved drowning on the beach. I promise you. This is a real description from a married couple. So yeah, it looks like they at least saw this object, both of them, and I don't know about any other witnesses right here off the bat that I'm seeing, but I'm sure as we go further down here, there's a lot more that we can get into in terms of witnesses once the military got to the ground and found the equipment at the crash. So yeah, I'll let you keep going with that.
Yeah, we still haven't even got to the bread and butter here, Hank. So just hold on, and we'll get to the real crazy crazy shenanigans soon. So moving forward to July 3rd, 1947, it was a Thursday. At the White Sands Proving Ground, an attempted launch of a V-2 rocket fails, never getting off the pad. Several people in the area are injured in a spray of acid, and Steve McKenzie is ordered to White Sands, where he spends nearly 24 hours watching the displays as the object flashes through the New Mexican skies. So this would be the UFO. Moving beyond July 3rd, we're now moving to July 4th. The first of the special flights from Washington arrive. On the plane is Warrant Officer Robert Thomas. Thomas and his companions are in uniform upon arrival, but quickly change to civilian clothes to get in disguise. Thomas wants an on-site briefing as soon as it could be arranged. These men remain at Roswell through the retrieval. William Woody and his father watch a flaming object, white with a red trail, fall toward the ground north of Roswell. And during a thunderstorm near Corona, New Mexico, W.W. Mac Brazel, who is going to play a big role coming up soon, he hears a tremendous thunderclap that sounds like an explosion, but it's it's somehow different from the rest of the thunder. So Brazel notices something strange is going on, and others in the area report the same phenomenon. At 11:27, the radar sites continue to watch this strange object in the sky. Seems to pulsate a number of times, then explodes into a starburst. The belief is that the object is now crashed. Jim Ragsdale and Trudy Truelove see a bright flash of light and hear a roaring sound that passes overhead, and Ragsdale knows that something has struck the ground close to their campsite.
Yeah, in 1947, seeing something like that in the sky, it's kind of alarming. We see a lot of things in the sky now. There's a lot of interference just from city lights and whatnot. So many aircraft and drones going about that. I can't imagine 2 years after World War II and seeing that. So yeah, just try to put into perspective what these people were thinking when they saw this at the time.
I was just about to say, the fact that it was 2 years after World War II, I'm sure tensions have not settled, anxiety still high. Strange things in the sky could be great cause for concern, especially with the United States still grieving the Pearl Harbor attack. So let's move on. Let's do Saturday, July 5th now. So we're starting to head towards the event. So Jason Ridgeway, whose name has been changed for anonymity, is a sheep herder in central New Mexico, and he finds the remains of a crashed saucer. He spends little time on the site and refuses to tell anyone about it until many years later. Ridgeway is actually a friend of Mac Brazel, a gentleman that we were just talking about. He's going to come into play very shortly. So archaeologists, including W. Curry Holden, working the sites around Roswell, stumble across the impact site where the object had crashed, and one of them heads to the closest phone to tell Sheriff George Wilcox of the discovery of the remains of the crashed aircraft and find out what it is. Wilcox calls the local fire department to alert them about the crash. One truck with Dan Dwyer on it responds to the call. The site is about 35 miles north of Roswell, so it is a bit of a drive. The Roswell Fire Department, escorted by members of the Roswell Police Department, make a run along Pine Lodge Road, northwest of Roswell. These are among the first civilians who stumble across the impact site of the UFO. At about 5:30 a.m., the military, knowing the approximate location of the saucer crash, move in with a carefully selected team for the recovery of the spacecraft. The soldiers find civilians on the site already, obviously checking it out, wondering what's going on, and they're escorted off the premises while others secure the area. So a total of 5 bodies are found on this site. That's 5 bodies. Now, what kind of bodies? What do you think, Hank?
I'm sure the fire department and the civilians that first got there would tell you a much different story than the officials who took over the case from them. But from the descriptions of the people who actually saw this before the whole case was whitewashed, basically, they were not human bodies, essentially.
Yeah, that's definitely what it's starting to look like. So the site is then cleaned and secured in about 6 hours. And following the rain the night before, Brazel inspects the pastures surrounding the ranch house, and riding with him is the young son of the Proctors. His name's William D. Proctor. During the inspection, Brazel finds a large debris field, and scattered on the slopes out in the farmland and into the sinkhole and depressions are metal, plastic-like beams, pieces of lightweight material foil, string, I heard rubber strips. It looked odd. And the debris is thick enough that the sheep refuse to cross the field and are driven around it to water more than a mile away. So Thomas and his crew move out to the impact site. The bodies, originally covered by sheets, are now in lead-lined body bags. Only those with the highest clearance are allowed to close to the center of the impact. Guards are posted facing out to keep the curious away.
And just to interject there, so yeah, you can imagine this wouldn't be, not to get too ahead of ourselves, anything too benign if they're putting material from this crash in lead-lined body bags. I would just keep that in mind because that's significant.
For sure. So John McBoyle, a reporter for the radio station KSWS in Roswell, tries to reach the crash site. He phones to report an object looking like a crushed dishpan, similar to a flying saucer, and he decides to tell Lydia Sleppy, who works at the parent station in Albuquerque, to hang on. She overhears an argument and tells McBoyle to forget it, that he's made a mistake. McBoyle at this point is about 40 miles north of Roswell. Sleppy then tries to put out a message on the teletype, and the message is intercepted by the FBI in Dallas, and she's ordered not to complete the transmission. And while this is happening, Melvin F. Brown, who is guarding the impact site at the moment, is warned to climb into the back of a truck. And although he has been ordered not to look under the tarp, he decides to anyways, and he finds the bodies of quote-unquote alien flight crew. They're small with large heads and skin that is yellow or orange. Very different from the little green men we see so often in media. Gray, yellow and orange would be quite striking. I would definitely, I'd love to be Marty McFly, go back and see what those bodies look like. It'd be really cool to see that.
Yeah, I wondered too how much of their coloration was due to possible discoloration during the flight. That would be quite the disturbing thing to see after someone told you not to look. And I almost feel bad for that guy because who is going to believe him? He's not able to tell his boss or anybody around him what he saw because he wasn't supposed to look. And yeah, I can't imagine telling your wife that either. So yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, for sure. So Glenn Dennis, the mortician working in Roswell at the Ballard Funeral Home, receives a call from the base mortuary officer who asks him about small caskets. And later in Roswell for a conference, C. Bertram Schultz, vertebrate paleontologist, drives north from the city on Highway 285. To the west, he sees a number of guards along the highway. Schultz isn't interested in driving to the west, so he doesn't stop, nor is he bothered by these guards. Then the Roswell-based mortuary officer calls again. He asks Glenn Dennis questions about what various chemicals would do to blood and tissue. He also wants to know what the procedures for preparing a body that has lain out in the elements. Dennis suspects a fatal crash involving a very important person.
Yeah, very important for sure. Person, yeah, very important something, I would say. VIS would be more accurate for this one.
VIS, VIET, VIT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or VIFP, very important future person. You know, maybe.
As long as it's not a VID. To anybody who knows the wars going on in our TikTok comments, you will know what we're referencing. So Glenn Dennis then receives a call from downtown Roswell where an airman had been injured, and the funeral home where Dennis works also operates the ambulance service. So Dennis drives the injured airman to the base, is waved through the gate, and stops at the rear of the hospital. Parked behind it at the loading dock and in front of the emergency room are 3 ambulances. In the rear mirror, Dennis sees small canoe-like devices and strange debris of some sort. So these alien bodies, they arrive at the base and are taken in for examination, and Dr. Jesse Johnson pronounces them dead. 2 doctors who are not assigned to the base but who have arrived on one of the special flights begin the preliminary autopsy. So cut back to the crash site. Brazel, as we mentioned, he's the real VIP of this entire story. He decides to take a few scraps of the material he finds, heads to the home of his closest neighbors, Floyd and Loretta Proctor, and he shows them the silver material that he can neither burn nor cut. The Proctor suggests he take it into town and show the sheriff. Inside the base hospital at Roswell, Dennis is confronted by two officers. A red-haired captain tells Dennis that he has seen nothing and heard nothing. If he opens his mouth, they will be picking his bones out of the sand. That's a quote from one of the officers to him. So they're threatening him at this point, right? They're men in blacking him.
That's a good use of the phrase. Yeah, new verb for my vocabulary. I like that.
We may use that in future podcasts.
We might make a production company called Men in Blacked. I don't know. But
sounds like a category on a website.
Exactly. Glad you got that, but also concerned. All right.
So military bases along the West Coast have fighter jets on standby in case the flying discs are seen again. A few bases in Oregon and Washington have planes equipped with gun cameras and are on airborne alert. So, Sherman Campbell of Circleville, Ohio, reports to the sheriff that he has what he thinks is an explanation for some of the flying disc sightings. He's found a weather balloon on his farm. It is metallic, with a kite-like appendage on it. The device is displayed at the local newspaper office, then returned to Campbell. Jean Campbell, Campbell's daughter, reports that it is kept in a barn for years afterwards. Later that evening, Brazel removes the large circular piece of the debris from the range. Brazel either loads it into the back of his truck or drags it along behind. We don't know. He stores it in a livestock shed about 3 miles north of the crash site. While this is happening, the bodies are sealed into a long crate, which is taken to a hangar. It is left there overnight with spotlights playing on it while MPs stand guard around it. They never approach the bodies or the site, under orders most likely. Melvin Brown, along with other soldiers, is ordered to stand guard outside the hangar. And Brown's commanding officer approaches and says, "Come on, Brownie, let's have a look inside." But there's nothing to see because everything has been packed, crated, and ready for shipment. So that's the end of July 5th. So what do you think so far, Hank? What's your stake on this on these shenanigans?
The thing that I wish most and could have changed the course of history dramatically is I wish somebody called the news first before the fire department. You know, if they just called one of the local newsmen with a camera, got them over there, yeah, it could have changed the course of history. We might be having a completely different conversation. I might not be a hybrid. I might, at this point, be full alien. So, we have no idea. The FBI, not the FBI, the fire department who showed up, and the police, clearly they tipped off the military, and it's clear from the outset of the story, which I'm sure you can all tell, they're trying to cover it up immediately from the get-go, as soon as they find this equipment in the bodies. So, yeah, not very much a mundane thing that fell to the ground there that day, I would say, personally.
Yeah, that's a great point there, Hank, and just even hearing the story played back, you can tell it's the basis for so many important stories in our popular culture. I mean, looking at Close Encounters of the Third Kind, movies like Paul, pretty much any alien abduction movie or TV show, The X-Files, all have a basis within this story. And it just goes to show you how, even if all of this is a big hoax, even if this really is a weather balloon, just how much of an impact it really has had on the years of popular culture, of literature, of the way we have a perception of these aliens. It's phenomenal. All of something that crashed in a little field in a town in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico.
Yeah, phenomenal. Phenomenal is the right word for it. And even if it is a hoax, like you say, which that would almost be crazier because this whole topic being spurred from a weather balloon, yeah, I don't think so. And given all the details of the story from now on, I don't think military police guard crashed weather balloons. But that's just my input. Who knows? What do I know?
I mean, it's definitely something to speculate on. But let's keep going. Let's move on to Sunday, July 6th. So, Sunday, July 6th, 1947, Mac Brazel gets up early. He does his chores. He drives into Roswell, which is about 75 miles away, by the way. And he stops at the sheriff's office and visits with George Wilcox. Contrary to published reports, Wilcox is excited about the find and suggests the military at the Roswell Army Airfield be notified. And here's another thing, definitely shouldn't have done, because we all know what happens when the military gets involved. So at 11:30 a.m., Dennis locates his friend, the nurse, who agrees to meet him for lunch. He drives out to the base to meet her at the officers' club. And while waiting for the military officers to arrive, Wilcox dispatches 2 of his deputies to the ranch. They have only the directions given by Brazel, but both men are familiar with the territory, so Wilcox believes they will be able to find the debris field. So while this is happening, William Woody and his father drive out toward the area where they'd seen the object coming down, but the roads are blocked. The side roads off Highway 285 from Vaughan into the west are guarded by military police who allow no one to pass.
Yeah, they really want to guard those weather discoveries and temperatures from the Soviets. Very, very important findings.
I actually I feel like I might have read this in a book, but this could be a rumor, that there was actually acrylic writing on the craft. So they thought it might be Soviet, a type of Soviet hoax, but I think that could just be a theory or a rumor.
Well, hey, we're all about rumors here. Just kidding. But that would be a possible explanation for them guarding the crashed object. So I can't discount that. If it's true, I guess we'll find that out as we continue reading. I don't remember that detail, but I remember that detail on a few different crashed objects. So it could be Roswell, but there are a few different ones where they found some strange hieroglyph. You know what I'm saying? Like markings on various crashed objects. So it's quite possible. It definitely has happened before, so it wouldn't be out of character.
Yeah, I believe we talked about that in our last podcast, the Rendlesham Forest incident that one of the soldiers had binary downloaded into his brain, and one of the bases for the theories that these extraterrestrials are actually humans from the future.
Exactly, and that would explain the very similar language patterns to us. So, yeah.
So moving on to the rest of July 6th. So at this point, the news is starting to catch on. So Frank Joyce, a reporter for radio station KGFL, calls the sheriff and asks if anything interesting is happening at the office. Wilcox refers him to Brazel. Colonel William Blanchard, commanding officer of the 509th Bomb Group, orders Jesse A. Marcel, the air intelligence officer, to investigate. Marcel immediately drives to the sheriff's office. Marcel interviews Brazel, examines the pieces of the material that Brazel brought in, and decides he had better visit the ranch to examine the field for himself. Marcel, taking some of the debris with him, returns to the base, reports to Blanchard what he has seen, and Blanchard, convinced that he is in possession of something highly unusual, perhaps Soviet, alerts the next higher headquarters. No one mentions any type of balloon as of this.
Now that you mention that, I do remember that detail from Ross Coulthard's In Plain Sight. It is very interesting. Their story, that could be a real explanation, but as you'll see throughout the story, their official line on what they found there, it changes multiple times, which is what makes this so suspect and such an interesting case. So yeah, we'll see further what they continue to say they found there at the site officially.
Yeah, absolutely insane, and the fact that this is just at the dawn of the Cold War makes tensions that much higher, right? So Marcel returns to the sheriff's office with the senior counterintelligence agent assigned to the base, Captain Sheridan Cabot. They escort Brazel back to his ranch and examine the debris field. Acting on orders from Major General Clements McMullen, deputy commander of the Strategic Air Command, Blanchard obtains from the sheriff's office more of the debris. It is sealed in a courier pouch and loaded on an airplane to be flown to the Fort Worth Army Airfield, where it is given to Colonel Thomas Dubose for transport onto Washington, D.C. So it's going federal at this point. This is when they're really starting to know something is not right here. I mean, they knew that from the start, but it's getting more and more classified as we speak. After Marcel and Cabot leave with Brazel, the two deputies return to say they did not find the debris field but observed a burned area in one of the pastures. There, the sand has been turned to glass and blackened. It looks as if something circular has touched down. Flying saucer. At the Fort Worth Army Airfield, Dubose and Colonel Alan D. Clark, the base commander, meet the aircraft from Roswell. Clark receives the plastic bag with the debris and walks to the command B-26 to fly it to Washington, D.C., and General McMullen. Because of the distance to the ranch over roads that are less than adequate, Brazel, Marcel, and Cabot do not arrive until after dark. They stay at the Hines house, an old ranch house close to the debris field, eat cold beans, and wait for daylight. Marcel runs a Geiger counter over the large piece of wreckage Brazel has stored in the cattle shed. He detects no signs of radiation, which is quite strange. A lot of times when we review these cases, radiation is almost always present with UFO encounters, with any type of flying saucer sighting. So this is a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, and that's it's funny that this is the anomaly where so many UFO crash encounters and cases. This is the anomaly, is that it doesn't have radiation all over the site. So, yeah, the fact that so many do is incredibly concerning. But yeah, this one happened not to. So who knows? Maybe different make and model of disc that they took here that doesn't run on radioactive fuel or material.
Maybe too. This is just me theorizing, but maybe the craft has to be powered on for there to be that radiation contact to take place. Maybe the crash had happened, the bodies were found long after the fact. It's still strange, though. I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend like I'm a nuclear physicist. I have any idea what's going on, but it's just a peculiar piece of the story that I do find sticks out a little bit oddly. So moving on, Monday, July 7th, 1947. So at about 2 a.m., a special flight leaves for Andrews AAF in Washington, D.C. Some of the debris and the bodies are on this flight. So Brazel takes the two military officers out to the crash site on this day as well. It is 3/4 of a mile long and 200 to 300 feet wide. Gouge starting at the northern end of it extends for 400 or 500 feet toward the other end. It looks as if something has touched down and skipped along. The largest piece of debris is recovered at the southern edge of the gouge, and the debris is as thin as newsprint but incredibly strong. This is foil that, when crumpled, unfolds itself without a sign of a wrinkle, and these beams that flex slightly and have some symbols on them in material resembling bakelite. So Marcel and Cabot walk the perimeter of the field and then range out looking for more details of another crash site, but find nothing else. Finally, they return and spend the remainder of the day collecting debris. They load the rear of Marcel's car and then the Jeep carryall driven by Cabot, and about dusk they begin the trip back to Roswell. So, also while this is happening, Lieutenant General Nathan E. Twining, the commander of the Air Material Command in Wrightfield, Ohio, and this comes up a lot in our TikTok videos, essentially the next higher headquarters for both the Alamogordo Army Airfield and the Kirtland Army Airfield, he decides to change his plans and flies into Alamogordo. And General Carl Spaatz, commander of the Army Air Forces, who is on vacation in the Pacific Northwest, tells reporters that he knows nothing about the flying discs or the plans of various local units to search for them. Intrigued by this story, Joyce has told him about the telephone interview he conducted with Brazel. Walt Whitmore Sr. wants to learn more. Whitmore, who knows many of the ranchers and is familiar with the area, drives out to find Brazel. And Brazel, who is in the company of Walt Whitmore Sr., has been asked to stay the night in Roswell.
All right, and before we move on to the next day, because that concludes, which day was that? July 7th. One part of that stood out to me a lot, and I think about all the time, because there's so many rumors, and I'm sure we'll get into other cases that lead into it, is the potential secret crash retrieval program and back engineering. As it mentions here, the material that they found was extremely thin metal, but it was basically indestructible from what they could see, and in many reports I've read, it's incredibly light. And it just so happens this April of this year, actually 2022, NASA announced the discovery of a new alloy called GRX-810. and essentially it can endure temperatures 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's more malleable and can survive more than 1,000 times longer than existing state-of-the-art alloys. I had read somewhere else, I can't find it, but it is way lighter than aluminum and much stronger than steel. And so this is a new invention we're coming up with nowadays. From all reports and rumors, the back engineering of these crash crafts has been extremely slow with little to no progress. So if we can see the progress even now, it's been like 80 years later, where they can finally maybe make and mold alloys and metals similar to these crash craft, that would be incredible. And it looks like if it is true, this could potentially be what we're seeing from NASA.
Yeah, that's absolutely astounding. Um, and reverse engineering is definitely something that the black government does whenever these objects are found. Looking at S4, Area 51, that's absolutely what's happening. And oftentimes, my theory is that they take these materials, they take these crafts, and they attempt to reverse engineer just like they would with Soviet aircraft, Nazi aircraft from World War II. Anytime there's a war, you can really get a glimpse into the state of mind that high-ranking officials within intelligence agencies have when looking at extraterrestrials or UFOs. It definitely feels like they're at war with these beings, and that I think is a reason why everything is so classified. Is that they did not know what they were dealing with. Their whole motto for how they go about doing these things is say nothing, scorch earth though. So it is absolutely tragic because, in my opinion, I do not believe these beings are nefarious, hostile, because clearly they're advanced. They would have shown that side of them already, and the only time we've seen them interact with us to a point of no turning back is when they stop nuclear launches from happening.
Well, they actually did turn on the Russians' nukes, so they did the opposite with them, so that could have been bad. But the only thing that I could say that would explain that is the compartmentalization and the secrecy might be because they might not be suspicious of the aliens, which I'm sure they were, but they might not want this tech to fall into Russian hands too. So even though it is terrible, and I agree with you, it is tragic, but I think it's tragic because we should have this technology out in the open so that scientists from all different countries of the world can come together and work on it. But human nature, unfortunately, that's not the way it goes. So it's on a need-to-know basis. It's all compartmentalized, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm sure there's probably 3 guys in the country who have been able to work on this thing, and they're not allowed to talk to each other. So perfect. Yeah, not the scientific method that actually advances things forward.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there, Hank. So let's move on to the next day, July 8th. So this is when all hell breaks loose. This is when a story is sent out to the AP Wire, and the story headlines, "The Army Air Forces here today announced a flying disc had been found." And the phones at the military bases start ringing. And essentially the nation starts to wake up to what happened in Roswell. And calls come into Roswell from all over the world as the press release hits the various news wires. And this is where I think my dad had heard about it, being absolutely amazed that the old Flash Gordon shorts and sci-fi from back then could be real. So this is something really cool to imagine what it was like for in our hometown here. Area undisclosed because we're not telling you where we are. But it's insane. So this is where things absolutely hit the ceiling. So news is out. Flying saucers have been found, and the public is aware. And morning newspapers trumpet the story that the flying saucer found near Roswell is not actually a flying saucer. It is a weather device, and this is sent out the following day after the 8th on Wednesday, July 9th. So they're turning back, right? And this is something we see in a lot of cases where the flying saucers or the UFOs have been found. Then the government steps in and goes, nope, weather balloon, flare tests, you name it. It's becoming a pattern, and this is where that pattern started.
Absolutely. Obfuscation and confusion. That's the military's expertise. And you'll see much more of that in this case and many cases to come.
Exactly. And while this is happening, while news is breaking out worldwide, the military is cleaning up like crazy in Roswell. They're making sure that no more civilians can stumble across the field. They are covering their ass and trying to get as much debris out as possible. So Judd Roberts, along with Walt Whitmer Sr., who we talked about earlier on this episode, attempt to drive out to the debris field, but run into the military cordon and are turned back. So at this time, essentially, the telephones at the base are still tied up by incoming calls, but more of the wreckage is being brought to the base and is being boxed into crates of various sizes and shapes and being sent out to classified locations across the nation. More of the wreckage, or some of the wreckage, there's theories of where they went. Some went to apparently Area 51. Some went to Fort Worth. Where's that other base?
Is it Wright-Patterson Air Force Field? That is one of the weirdest, creepiest ones where I think that holds a lot of the keys to the kingdom there. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yep, that's exactly the one I was thinking about, with the blue room, which is the room within the room, and some of the bodies were also taken there for autopsies. And there's been a lot of footage released. We're not sure if it's verified or not, but there's claims that some of the footages of alien autopsies of the aliens themselves come from Roswell. I don't know if I believe that. I do think that people are cashing in. It's just like the Bigfoot craze back around the same time. People are trying to jump into the alien craze.
Understandably, like this. Imagine the amount of people jumping on different crazes. The alien craze has the potential to completely change. It could create new religions, and we all know how profitable that is. So, yeah, the people that want to get on, people want to get in on the ground floor on new phenomena like this. So, yeah, it's tough to wade through a lot of the BS to get to the actual, truth.
Yeah, definitely. So next day, Thursday, July 10th, Brazel is being held at a guest house on a military base in Roswell, and the officers are trying to convince him not to say anything, essentially keeping him quiet, making sure that he is staying out of the way of reporters. He's given a physical by the doctors at the hospital, who don't find anything too odd. But this is another case of that government pressing, where they try to subdue the truth from getting out, as they're trying to keep the truth under wraps. So members of the military at this time are also warning civilians around Roswell who know anything of the events that they're not allowed to talk about what happened. And apparently, in some cases, witnesses are threatened with death if they speak to anyone. So you can really see the threats are coming out at this point. The government doesn't know what they're dealing with, and they're terrified, and they're making sure they apply pressure onto the citizens, and this is really where things start heating up.
And just to interject, that in itself is such a common thread that even it really scares me to what are they so afraid of themselves if they're willing to threaten normal civilians and threaten civilians' family members as well, which I know, sorry to bring it back again to Tom DeLonge in modern day, but he mentioned that something he was told behind closed doors in a meeting with the military kept him up for 3 days and he wasn't able to sleep. So if they were telling him the truth and they weren't just messing with him and telling him disinformation to throw him off the real trail, it is possible that they're hiding this because they know something so terrifying or potentially world-changing that they know would terrify the public. So, yeah, either way, don't think it's ethical to threaten people and their families, but that there has to be a reason for it.
Yeah, it's I think it's some of the reasons you mentioned earlier: public safety, military secrets. But at this point, the public starting to shy away. Right, it's the phenomenon that the rumor mill is buzzing, and now everybody thinks it's a weather balloon. Now that the press has put out that the military says it's a weather balloon that crashed, right? So Mac Brazel is absolutely not having a good time at this point. He is swearing an oath that he will never speak of this or reveal in detail what he saw, and he's starting to regret this. So time's starting to pass, and slowly the Roswell incident is forgotten, and kind of floats into the past. And it does resurface years later, about 20 years later. But for now, it kind of dies into the back of public consciousness, where most of the people who still remember it and still really think about it, other than the true believers like us, which we weren't alive back then, but are the Roswell residents themselves. And in the summer of 1950, Bill Brazel, Mac Brazel's son, actually finds scraps of the craft. His father, Mac, confirms this and says, "That's definitely some of the contraption I found." And Bill Brazel in Corona mentions his discoveries. And the next day, Captain Armstrong and 3 others from the Roswell base arrive and ask for the material. And Armstrong reminds them that his dad cooperated with them, and it is the younger Brazel's patriotic duty to give the material to the military. So the son denies it, decides it's not a good idea.
Yeah, I got goosebumps on my hybrid skin here. That in itself is so manipulative. It makes sense that they would. It makes sense that they would do that and say that and use that tactic. And I'm not that naive. I know the military has to use harsh counterintelligence measures to get people to do what they want. But yeah, that just telling that kid, look, your dad cooperated with us. It's your patriotic duty to do the same. Ugh. I don't know. Something about it just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I feel bad for that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so years pass. 1969 comes and goes. Americans walk on the moon for the first time. And in 1972, Inez Wilcox tells her granddaughter, Barbara Duggar, of the involvement of the Shaves County Sheriff in the events of 1947. And she mentions that her husband, Sheriff Wilcox, was informed that one of the beings actually survived the crash. Mrs. Wilson says military personnel used death threats to keep the family from talking about the events, and that is why people kept quiet. So, the common thread of death threats, keeping people quiet, keeps this topic pretty low memory for years until roughly 1978, when Jesse Marcel is interviewed by a number of researchers, including Leonard H. Stringfield and Stanton Friedman. Marcel tells them that he is sure the wreckage is nothing from the Earth, and later Marcel grants interviews to various news organizations, but these reports do not gain as wide dissemination until 1979, when Bob Pratt interviews and later publishes his interview with Marcel, in which he admits that he was the intelligence officer who had received the parts of a flying saucer. And so this is where things really heat up. And this is also around the same time as Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's public consciousness again. It's become part of American pop culture.
Exactly. And it really makes you think, why nowadays is the Pentagon so open to and so willing to verify certain UAP videos, as they call it, but they've for decades gone to the ends of the earth to discredit, threaten, and whitewash all UFO witnessings, cases, everything like that. And then nowadays, oh look, actually we've made a program and we're willing to look into it. But let's only start from 2004. It almost feels to me like they want to cover their behinds because they know everybody's going to find out about this no matter what. And so they're trying to say, okay, let's wash our hands clean of all the men in blacking, essentially, that they've done in the previous decades. And just saying, oh, look what we've discovered, as if they're trying to discover it with us now. When really, no, they've known about this for decades. They've been looking into it. And maybe they're just changing strategies nowadays where they want to pretend like they're slowly discovering this with the public. I don't know. Possible theory that I've seen many others, people online talk about, but it's clear that the people involved in this case later on in their life, on their deathbed even, they changed their tune and said, hey, like now that I have nothing to lose, all my family's gone, I'm going to be the last one and I'm going soon. Yeah, it was not a weather balloon. So make of that what you will.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but I mean it works, right? Typically, the public does believe anything that the government decides to tell them, whether that be a weather balloon, a flare exercise, a military craft exercise. It seems to be they just put it out in the press. It's taken as gospel, and the world forgets and moves on to the next thing. And especially now in today's day and age, we have things like Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. That feels like an eternity ago.
Mm-hmm. I think they did I read somewhere, this, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's a 3-day news cycle now where the whole phrase 15 minutes of fame is actually getting close to that, where you think about it, these massive things that happen in the news, I won't even bring half of them up because we'll probably get stricken and brought off YouTube because they're so awful to talk about, and you know how YouTube is these days, but you hear about it and everybody talks about it and puts it in their stories and their Instagram bios, and then it's gone in 3 days and everyone's talking about, like, I don't know. I was going to bring up some pop culture reference, but I don't follow it enough. So, but it is nuts. So imagine nowadays, this story would have been buried like that. They would have a much easier time. So these people back then, they were able to bury it back then when people would focus on news stories for years. So yeah, that shows how determined the military-industrial complex was to get rid of this thing.
And I wonder where that craft is to this day. I mean, hazard a guess. I'm going to guess Wright-Patterson could be moved to S4, probably even deeper than S4 at this point. The alien body is probably long gone, was probably destroyed in fear of it being compromised. But it would be an absolute treat to dive into some of the classified files that I know exist. They're out there. We know. But to find out a little bit more information of what the military was able to see, because we just see the witness testimony, the obvious cover-up by the government, but what lies beyond that?
Exactly. And before we wrap it up, just to touch on that point, as mentioned in those leaked Wilson Davis memos, which I'm positive we're going to do a video on in the future, if you guys want to go to our TikTok at Are They Really Here, I did a 3-part series on that. It's a little dry compared to most of our content, but I really want to get that out there because I think that could be one of the most earth-shattering stories if it comes to light. And I know Lou Elizondo is planning on testifying at a hopefully soon to come U.S. congressional hearing. And he's, now that the Wilson Davis memo, which, let me tell you, sorry, I haven't given context, it essentially was a leaked memo from an astronaut. I won't go into too much detail, but if it is, and the document is real for a fact, but if what they're talking about in the document is real, there is a UFO reverse engineering program, and materials from decades past, which could include Roswell, have been they've attempted to reverse engineer these materials at some base, and it is highly rumored that it's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And Dr. Eric Davis is the one who transcribed this Wilson Davis memo during his meeting with Admiral Thomas Wilson, who denies the provenance of this memo to this day, but he said in the memo that if he was asked about it, he would deny it, so of course. But yeah, we need Lou Elizondo to testify on this. We need Dr. Eric Davis to testify on that memo, and Admiral Wilson too. And who knows what could come out. We might be able to get to the bottom of what happened at Roswell and what the hell crashed to the Earth that day. And I'm not saying this as some pie in the sky. We are having congressional hearings ongoing. And the next one may be the one where they get deeper into this memo, because that memo was added to the public record in the previous congressional hearing, which happened 3-4 weeks ago. Can't remember exactly, but it is added to the public record. So any congressman, congresswoman that brings it up, it has to be investigated by the Pentagon now. So that's the progress we've made these days.
Yeah, it's an incredible topic to dive into, and maybe we'll do that on one of the next couple episodes. But definitely check out our TikTok. Those are some great videos by Hybrid Hank over here. Yeah, definitely urge you to check them out. We also have a video on Roswell that definitely summarizes some of the events we talked about today, gives you a bit of visual. Eventually, we want to take this podcast to a place where we can include a little bit more visual elements. We'll probably be displaying videos on the TV, going into a little bit more high caliber edits for the video portion of the podcast. So we'd love to expand on Roswell on a visual sense as well. For all those listening to us on Spotify or any other platforms, we really appreciate it there too. But yeah, for now, we're still getting used to the podcast world. We come from mostly a TikTok base. This is both of our first podcast, and we're having an absolute blast so far. We really appreciate you watching and listening. It's been a crazy ride for the both of us. Our goal, we just want to meet aliens.
Yeah, we just want them aliens. And yeah, this has been a blast, actually. And I got to thank Isaiah over here for doing the heavy lifting while I've provided the color commentary. But it's so fun. Eventually, I just can't wait till we get to the point where we're like a well-oiled machine and like comfortable enough to really settle into this and have just so much more fun with this than we've already been having, which is a lot. And, we are new to podcasting, and this is a brand new format for us. I really can't wait till we can eventually potentially get into live streaming with you guys to involve you and get the audience asking us questions while we're speaking, and giving your input and bringing things up that maybe we hadn't thought of before, and bringing up facts about these cases that we hadn't thought of before, and being able to stream content for you during those live streams and all of us watch it at the same time. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities of what we're going to do in the future, a lot of things we want to get into. So yeah, this has been a blast for me, hopefully for Isaiah here too. And I just want to thank you guys all for watching again. We already have one episode up. It was kind of just an intro episode, 20 minutes long. We didn't really cover anything specific. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Not sure what topic we're going to do next time, but it's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to get into it. And yeah, follow the TikTok at Are They Really Here? No question mark at the end, just at Are They Really Here?
Yeah, it's definitely go follow that. We have a few topics we might want to discuss. Dulce is one of the ones we'll probably do over the next couple episodes. Wilson Davis memos, another one that we can definitely do. And that's the thing about the UFO world, is it's so often covered up that you can dig and you can find some of the craziest stories, and we can't wait to unravel it all. I mean, we've been making 2 to 3 videos a day for the past 2 months, and it feels like we're still finding new things every day, things that absolutely blow our minds. Just today, we posted a video of a UFO lasering a nuclear weapon, which we're not sure if it's real or not. It looks pretty crazy, but apparently that took place in California of 1964. So definitely go check that out. This podcast is most likely being released on Wednesday, June 22nd, and Friday we will probably be releasing episode 3. So if we don't catch you for Wednesday, definitely check out the next episode as well. We'll probably go live on both days just to pump up the podcast a little bit, try to bring in some more of an audience. But for now, we're probably going to take off, go look for some UFOs in the sky. Thank you so much for joining again. Follow Are They Really Here on TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube, which you're probably either watching or listening to us now, if not Spotify. But thank you again so much. I'm Isaiah.
And I'm Hybrid Hank, and like and subscribe. Almost forgot to say that on YouTube. Like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you get notifications of all future uploads.
Thank you so much. This is us, signing off.